Oh, morning Trainiacs. I am on the struggle bus today. Heart rate, super high. Now, in a lot of cases, new endurance athletes start focusing on pace. You get your Garmin watch and you're like, oh, hey, it says pace. And you know, that's the thing that's going to determine my pace at the end of it. Dude back there just dropped his phone and didn't notice that I had to go save his life. But then they might look at running with a heart rate monitor or hear me talking about heart rate running and go like, oh, well, heart rate is what I should use. I shouldn't focus on pace. Well, you're both right and you're both wrong. After I run my way home through air that suddenly feels like quicksand today, we're going to talk about what is better, to run with heart rate or to run by pace. When you should run by heart rate, when you should run by pace, when you should forget about one over the other, and what the benefits are of using one or the other. Why is the air so heavy today? All right, Trainiacs, I want to start by telling you a story about how I progressed in my running career. I started off in my first 2 years not worrying about pace or heart rate. I would just go out for runs and worry about how much distance could I accumulate. And what happened? Well, I was able to gradually being able to run, being proficient in running from the standpoint is like I could go and do a 30-minute run without stopping, but I wasn't improving whatsoever. My first half marathon was 1 hour and 53 minutes. Then after my second season, I ended up getting a Garmin watch and I started getting obsessed about pace. So I started pushing the pace. I started doing wind sprints. I started doing really fast running. I would go out and when I ran, I would see how much faster than the previous time I could actually go. I ended up bringing my half marathon time down from that hour 53 down to 1 hour 32 in just about 6 months worth of training. Really good, right? But then what happened after that is everything just petered out. I wasn't progressing whatsoever, and more than anything, I was just accumulating more injuries and actually getting slower because I wasn't able to train consistently. Then, about 4 years ago, I started getting a hold of understanding heart rate training. Then I started focusing on building a base, building a really strong foundation of fitness and mitochondrial fitness and building my engine, my aerobic capacity, whatever you want to call it. And then magically, I was feeling like I was running easier because I was running easier. I wasn't worried about the pace. And that's when my half marathon time went down to 1:28. And then all of my other training started getting better too, even though it felt like I was training easier. So what's right? Is it pace or is it heart rate? Well, it's both, and I'll explain why. It's drawing time. Because you need to build the endurance. You need to have the ability to build that endurance. And in a lot of cases, that's building the aerobic engine to access fat as fuel because it's almost an unending supply. If you can tap into accessing fat as fuel, you will be able to ride, run, swim for literally days on end. So what I've set up here is the 5-zone training system. Now, how it breaks down is that zones 1 and 2 are low intensity. This is under your aerobic threshold. It's under your first training threshold. It's known as the Maffetone method. It's known as zone 2 training. It's known as low intensity training. It's all kind of the same thing. Zone 3 is where a lot of people race, or it's often your tempo pace. This is comfortably uncomfortable. This is where most people actually spend most of their time training. Above zone 3, we will call the high intensity. Right in the middle of zone 4 is where your anaerobic threshold is. Your second threshold is right around there. We can lump basically all of this into high intensity. Now, to build endurance, which is the first thing that we need to do, we need to get good at burning fat as fuel. If you can burn fat as fuel, you're going to improve your endurance. You are going to end up being able to go for literally days on end. Now, what happens during zones 1 and 2 is your fat burning, it really increases and then starts tapering off, and you end up dipping more and more into using carbs. So if you can be at this low intensity training zone, you are actually going to burn more fat as fuel. You are going to do a better job of improving your endurance. The next thing we need to improve is our amount of mitochondria in our muscles. These are the energy producers in our muscles. And what happens with mitochondria is it increases and even increases into zone 3, where we're improving the amount of mitochondria, the number of energy producers in our muscles, but then it starts to taper off. So under this point, all in here, you are building more mitochondria, whereas after that point, you are making the mitochondria that you have function better. So we want to do both. There is no one that's better than the other, whether it's making more or making them function better. We need to do both. But when we look at zone 1, 2, 3, as far as making more, what happens in this zone 2 and 3 is, yeah, we make slightly more mitochondria, but in this intensity, we end up accumulating a lot of stress hormones. Remember when I said at this top of zone 2, that is our first aerobic threshold. Past that point, we're accumulating more lactic acid than we can buffer, so we end up accumulating a fair amount of stress hormones. So instead, what you really want to focus on is this sweet spot of building mitochondria at a very, very high rate while not accumulating a ton of stress hormones. Then with VO2 max, that is making the mitochondria that we have function better, it actually increases out here. So it ends up being worked on during the high intensity training over there. So how does this all relate to running by heart rate or running by pace? Well, for the low intensity running, the heart rate is a really good approximation of where that top of zone 2 is. Pace, it really isn't, because let's say you get a bad night's sleep. Let's say in my case, I had a cut over the last couple of weeks. It's bled a lot and my blood volume is pretty low. So my heart rate is actually going to be very, very high. Or you've flown, or it's really hot out. Your heart rate's going to shoot up and it's going to adjust for this because there is additional stress. So we want to make sure that for that low intensity, we're staying in those nice low zones 1 and 2, where we are building up a lot of mitochondria. We are teaching our body how to burn fat as fuel while not accumulating a ton of stress hormones. It's that happy medium of being able to build up your endurance and a huge base of fitness without being detrimental to your body. So that low intensity training should be driven by heart rate. And as your heart rate goes up and down and the pace goes up and down, you should be focusing on heart rate, not pace. Then going over to the speed work, what we're looking at is pushing ourselves hard enough to make our body go, holy smokes, that was so incredibly hard that I need to improve. I need to make the mitochondria function better, or I need to make the muscles stronger, or I need to make them turn over quicker. I need to make an adjustment to the body structure to be able to end up handling that load. And what we use for that is pace. And the reason that we use pace for that is because heart rate lags. So let's say you're doing a 2-minute interval. It might take all of that 2 minutes for your heart rate to get up into the right training zone. And then if we're using heart rate for that high intensity stuff, as a workout goes on, your heart rate's going to climb up much easier and your pace might get slower and slower. So neuromuscularly, you're not actually pushing yourself nearly as much. The reason that a track exists, or that specific run intervals at fast paces exist, is so that as you get tired, you're still trying to hit the same pace to dig into that well deep enough to force your body to create that hormetic response where it's going to make the adjustment to give you that progress that you're looking for. And then in the middle, for that zone 3, that race pace, that tempo, I don't believe in just doing things on the edge, like strict polarized training that is nothing but low intensity or high intensity. I think that people need to learn how to be in that race and tempo pace and adapt to it and be comfortable there, because that's probably where most people are going to race most races, like at variations of it. So come the last 6 to 12 weeks of really key training, there's lots of race pace intervals, and you've used that nice big base of mitochondrial density, a bunch of energy producers in your muscles. You're using the ability to burn fat as fuel, so you've got a huge amount of endurance capabilities, and you've got the ability to actually make those mitochondria function really well with those VO2 max workouts. So they're very efficient, and then you can harness that into race pace and have a really good race. So is it heart rate? Yes. Is it pace? Yes. It's both at the right times. For the 80% of the low training, I say go by heart rate. For the 20% of the high intensity training and the tempo-based training, I say go by pace / perceived effort, which we'll talk about in another video. Now, if you are looking for a training app to guide you to whatever race you want it to be, whether it's a triathlon, a running race, a swim run race, a cycling race, it's all done and customized for you. There is a link in the description below to our training app. You can go and check it out for free for 14 days. And if you aren't already subscribed, hit the subscribe button below. Later, Trainiacs.